Tonight we pick the brain of the man responsible for a company that deals with transport, water supply and treatment, hospitality, game farming, and a host of other activities under its umbrella. It is a company that is best known for the Zambezi Motors car dealership and now the prominent Zambezi Towers in Gaborone new CBD. When we last spoke, he told us about his 16 years experience in Zambia within the motor industry, in a role that allowed him to forge business relationships and experience in a number of countries around the world. Upon his return to Botswana in the 80s, it was this very experience that allowed him to see opportunities for the provision of transportation services across the region and internationally, and for the supply of goods. To begin, he tells us how he went about setting up his business step by step once he had identified said opportunities.
To start with, when I came back home, I was not ready, to embark on business. And I came home to join the government and had an offer, and that actually what inspired me. I said, having been out for a long time, where am I going to start from? So when I arrived, I reported to the relevant officers who had actually recruited me that, yes, I'm back home, but I need some little bit of time to settle. And it was during this period of settling that coming from the business world, I had to visit quite a number of business centers and so on. And what I saw really was nothing else but an opportunity. And immediately I took what we would call 360-degree turn and said, maybe I could do better. I could contribute to the country from a different, or to the economy from a different angle. So I decided to simply say, no, I'm not going to join the government. I'll work with the government from outside, and with hope, of course, that, I will contribute to development and contribute to the mainstream economy, which the decision, was not far from being right. And that's when I decided to start to form up a company and started my own business. But it was not very easy at the time because things were quiet. And I would want to think also that at the time we started business, many of my brothers and sisters, it was a time that, all of us believed that really the business world belonged to certain people, not to certain people, particularly, ourselves. But then given the exposure and, exposure training and, traversing that I did, to me, I didn't understand. I thought, yes, I can make it, and indeed, I haven't made it. I'm still struggling, but I've got no doubt that we will get there. So I started with a company then, a small little company called GEM, and this GEM stands for General Electrical Repairs and Maintenance. And this GEM company, it was part of Bedu those days. They had something called Bedu. But, of course, it was not really the aim because originally, I came from motor industry, which I believe had expertise and I could do better. So I started with GEM, and while this GEM was going on and doing also a little bit of import and export, So I formed a company called Overland Motors. And Overland Motors, that was the starting point. Although at the time we didn't have the franchise, most of the franchise were taken. Nonetheless, I didn't leave it there, as I had to go to, the south, met with the few that were left, which probably were seen as an unpopular brand, like Fiat and Alfa Romeo. I was actually the first person that brought Fiat and Alfa Romeo to this, country for the first time. And yes, we built it up, and we started growing. And it was again not very, very easy, because there's still, the belief which still prevails now, it's just that, certain industry later don't belong to us. But yes, we managed, and that was the starting point, culminating to where we are today.
Stay with us, as when we return, we continue our conversation with Mr. Nshakashokwe about his many years of experience in the world of business. From one of the poorest families in northern Botswana to wheeling and dealing around the world at the helm of Zambezi Corporation, Ishmael Nshakashokwe tells us what it took to get to where he is. Welcome back to First Issues, as we pick up our conversation with Mr. Ishmael Nshakashokwe, the man behind Zambezi Corporation, about his many lessons from the world of business. Having worked in Zambia and made relationships around the world in your post there, before coming up to set up operations in Botswana in the 80s, did you have to learn a new set of tricks for doing business in Botswana? How was it, and how is it doing business in Botswana? How is it different from everywhere else you have done?
There's not much difference, and yet there is a difference, in the sense that, like for instance here, I'm working with the world. I've networked with the world. And when I visit another country, be it France, Germany, Italy, Far East and so on, America, going to discuss business, I'm being taken serious. And I'm being taken as a business person. And they want to understand more about me. And they wanted to, to study me, do some due diligence on me. And then once they, again, concludes, obviously, we are doing business, they want to do business with me. But then, home here is, again, a little bit difficult, different. Different in the sense that, people sometimes they just get concerned. They just worry. They just cry for the unknown. Because when you are, growing, it's like, how is he doing? Little Monaco, watch him. What is happening? This. Nobody really ever, nobody sees you at home as a business person. And my concern is that who is going to be a business person in our own country? We have got to do it ourselves. And we have got to, set the precedents. We have got to, lead the race. But, it's totally different. Outside there, you are seen as a business person. You get all the respect that you deserve as a business person and all the support that you get as a business person. But at home, maybe also is that old, feeling of say, whose child is this? Where did he come from? What was his background? What is he doing? But what disappoints me most is that people never want to take time and ask. Even in the Bible is available that ask and we shall be given. But just to say, where did you come from? How did you go through? Where are you? Where do you want to go? And what are the actually, hurdles, along this, long journey? Nobody wants to do that, other than just work on assumption. Some of them, they'll say, oh, he must be a thief, or he must be limon. So, in this alone, I don't know if it's good for development of our country and its economy or something like that. We want a situation whereby, if you don't know, you ask. If you want it to be mentored, you approach. If you want it to be, guided, you do it. Because that's what we are here for. As an elderly person now, whatever I do, I don't think really I'm doing it for myself. I would want to think I'm doing it for my country. And I'm doing it for the upcoming, business entrepreneurs of Botswana. And, I've always said my doors are open. But up to now, really, I don't remember anybody who's come to me and say, I want to start business. And this is the plans that I have. How can I develop these plans further? Then, we go together, in this, not taking his business, not participating in his business, but, supporting with ideas, given the distance we've covered in business and the, I wouldn't say wealth of experience that we have, acquired, but, sharing the little of experience that we've acquired at home and abroad.
Speaking of traversing the world and all the experiences and achievements you have accomplished in the past decades, was self-belief ever something you had to contend with? Confidence in your own ability to do business, especially describing the culture you've just described that many of us grew up in, and your background?
Again, I want to correct you, madam, just a little bit, that I haven't made it. I'm still nowhere. Okay. I'm still nowhere, but of course, we have got to be grateful to God. Where we are, of course, is worth being thankful, for. Having traveled, having seen the differences, and having done some comparisons and so on, that helped. But most thing that I think played a major role in my business development is the very fact that we came from a very, very poor family. And if I tell you that during my primary schooling, if we had a pair of shoes, those sandals, we called them in those days, you would not wear them anywhere. When you are coming from school, just about 100 years before reaching home, you have to take them off completely. It's so difficult. And also, our mother, who really struggled with us, was also one of inspirations. Coming from that background, obviously, I kept on saying, when I grow up, I will change. When I grow up, I will do something else. And I've always wanted to make a change and see the difference. And with that in mind, I think that's what inspired me. And when I traveled, I traveled with my eyes open. When I discussed business with people, I paid attention. When I worked, wherever I worked, in different countries, of course, I made it a point that I learn as much as I can. And that all, came from, my background, and say my background was, that bad, and I would want to change.
Many people from disadvantaged neighborhoods struggle with self-belief and maybe a sense of inadequacy when they enter certain realms. This was never a challenge for you?
Whatever I do, madam, sometimes I do it, with two folds. One being, acting as a role model for upcoming, brothers and sisters who are inspiring the business world. I don't just do it now simply say, Ishmael, Ishmael. I want them to believe that, a change is inevitable. We have to change. We have to believe in ourselves. And we can do whatever anybody else can do. And there's nothing that is, meant for certain race or nationality or type of people or so on. So yes, with that, it never really, affected me. I was very, very, I stood my ground. I knew what I wanted, And I went after it as an entrepreneur and, culminated to where we are today.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure they're going to start calling you. You'll have to fight them off after this conversation here.
No, but really our doors are open because we have to do it. We believe that, if we are looking at sustainability, our people, it's about time. Our people really, it's about time. Our people taking the reins. It's about time that we believe in ourselves. It's about time that we stand up and be counted. It's about time that also, of course, authorities and everybody else, let go. I mean, you look into America, you look into other countries, you find that there are these Bill Gates, there are these people, there are these. You have to also create your own, Bill Gates, create your own people so that in the difficult times, there's sustainability. But we don't do it. I still don't believe that really those people that are from outside, they do this. They're very good for the economy. They are developing our country. They're helping us and this and that. But if there was a problem today, maybe some little bit of friction, they'll run away, they'll go away. But you and I, we've got nowhere to go. We are here. So why can't we be empowered fully without even hesitation so that, in the event of eventualities, we are there, to stand the ground and sustain our economy and sustain our, what's name? And of course, one last thing that probably I could mention. I'm still getting concerned in terms of industries. We are really lagging behind. We seem to be just consuming. For how long are we going to do this? But we need some support. We need some, some deliberate, move to say, yes, Botswanas, go out there, get what you can get, come in, we shall support you. Botswana, go out there, set a business in Europe, set a business anywhere, we shall support you. That kind of situation like anybody else. So it can only open our eyes further. And thank you very much, by the way, for actually talking to you.
Thank you. Welcome back to First Issues. As up next, we discuss a growing threat to the economic health of countries the world over. If I were to ask you what do you think the leading cause of death in the world is, what would you say? Would you say war, HIV/AIDS related deaths maybe, or famine, or maybe even road accidents? We're here to tell you that if you said any of those answers, you would be wrong. According to a 2015 report by the World Health Organization, or WHO, 7 out of every 10 deaths in the world are as a result of non-communicable diseases, or NCDs. The main illnesses being cancer, heart disease, lung diseases, and diabetes. These illnesses are said to be largely preventable, meaning that this pandemic is mostly man-made. What happens to industry when the labor force is plagued by death and disease? What does this mean for productivity and the overall bottom line? And what of governments that are expecting returns on the investments they have made in education and skills development, that have to contend with rising national healthcare bills and strained resources? Just take a moment and reflect. It is with all this in mind that we spoke to Professor Kiran Bhagat to try and understand these illnesses better and therefore truly understand what we are up against.
One of the principal reasons is that we, certainly in the developing world, have what we call a double burden. The World Health Organization says we have a double burden. We have the issue of infectious disease. We have bilharzia, we have malaria, we have TB, we have HIV, but we are now increasingly becoming more urbanized. We're beginning to follow the lifestyles of a modern culture. Unfortunately, the lifestyles of a modern culture have come together with the eating habits of a modern culture. We exercise less, we sit more, we eat the wrong foods. And as a result, we are developing what are called non-communicable diseases, diseases that you can't catch it from somebody. You catch it, if you like, from the things that you do yourself. So they are non-communicable, and they principally are the diseases of lifestyle. And that's why we're predominantly facing this issue, because now we've overcome largely tuberculosis and malaria and bilharzia, and leprosy and some of the infectious diseases. We're now having people living longer, but they're living longer with certain lifestyle patterns which are now developing diseases. And these are what we call the non-communicable diseases.
When introducing this topic, we referred to the regional and global impact that NCDs have had. We now ask Professor Bhagat, who has first-hand experience in these matters, how Botswana in particular has been affected by this pandemic.
Botswana is a very interesting case in Africa. We are now labeled, for good or for bad, a middle-income country. And that entails the fact, and that is one of the reasons why, is that our GDP, our income, is one of the highest on the continent. But with that has come a very rapid epidemiological change. What has happened is that the disease patterns have been compressed. What took place in Europe, where you had the agricultural revolution, you had the industrial revolution, you had the IT revolution, all of that occurred over 200 to 300 years. In Botswana, we've moved from the cattle post to the car within a matter of 2 or 3 decades. And so has the disease pattern. So what we saw as heart disease in Europe and in North America that took 200 to 300 years, we're now seeing very rapidly compressed in Botswana. So we're beginning to see diseases that took 200 or 300 years to occur within the European population. And we're mixing that with infectious diseases. So we're still having malaria, we still have TB, but we have people that are overweight, we have people that have got blood pressure, we have people that are having strokes, we have people that are developing cancers. The sort of diseases that we were not seeing literally 10, 15 years ago, we're now seeing filling our wards. We're seeing stroke like it's going out of fashion. We're seeing young children that we would normally see as adult diabetics. We're seeing children who are grossly overweight and that are diabetic. The city of Johannesburg released statistics last year that 65% of black women in Johannesburg are overweight. And we're not very far from that city. And we probably eat the same junk. And as a result, we know that obesity is becoming a much, much greater problem than the issue of malnutrition in this country. We're seeing that people are not exercising and that they're not fit more and more in the youngsters. We're seeing alcohol abuse. We're seeing liver damage. We're seeing cholesterol in populations that we never saw before. We're seeing sugar. We're seeing an enormous consumption of salt in this country because of the processed industry of the food industry. We're seeing carbonated fizzy drinks, the content of which is loaded with sugar. And so we're seeing all of this mixing in a population that has not adapted to it. It took 200 or 300 years in Europe. Our bodies are not used to this sudden influx of sugar and sudden influx of fat and sudden influx of day-to-day stress. And so the whole body is in a state of turmoil. And as a result, we're seeing the suicide, we're seeing the stress, we're seeing the headaches, we're seeing the depression, we're seeing the insomnia, the lack of sleep. So people are taking painkillers, they're taking antidepressants, they're taking sleeping tablets, they're taking blood pressure pills. They come in to see us because they're overweight, and as a result of that, they're developing the diseases of overweight. And they all intertwine. For example, if you're overweight, you have a very high incidence of cancer. And people are not appreciative that these environmental lifestyle conditions that we're now sitting in, that we now face, are causing the diseases.
We trust that we have given you a better appreciation of the full economic implications of the growing NCD epidemic worldwide. Do make sure to share your observations and views with us on either our Facebook, Twitter or YouTube pages, and even via SMS. With that, it's good night from me, Namitso Samakula, and the First Issues team.